Greetings, fellow classmates. My name is Rohan Shanbag, and today I'll be talking about the ethics regarding software piracy. In this presentation, I'll be discussing the different types of software piracy and explaining the ethical and unethical side of software piracy. The ethical side will be presented from the software pirate perspective, and the unethical will be presented from the software designer's perspective. So the ethical standard we're using to test the action will be from SIIA, which is a trade association on the Software and Information Industry Association. They are one of the major regulators of software piracy worldwide, and they're known as a trade association. Their ethical standard is that buying and using pirate software is risky for corporate and individual users. Furthermore, according to them, anyone who purchases a copy of software has the right to load that copy onto a single computer and to make another copy for archival or storage purposes, or in very limited and rare circumstances for maintenance and repair. Furthermore, they also believe that the distribution of software, unless given consent by the software designer themselves, is illegal and punishable by law. On the right side here, you can see the SIIA IP protection logo. That's their main logo for trade association. And on the left side, you see three main things: report software piracy, report content piracy, and report online piracy. Their firm believe that whenever you see any kind of piracy, you should report it and not keep it secret, so that piracy as a whole can kind of be stopped. So before we get into the ethical and unethical side, understanding the five main types of software piracy is also really important for a better understanding of the overall ethics involved. So the first kind of software piracy is on the left. It's known as soft lifting. In this kind of piracy, there is one owner of the software, but the users are multiple. So in this case, someone will legally buy the software, but then others will illegally use that software by downloading that software to their computer from the person who bought the original software. The second kind of piracy is on the right side here. As you can see, there's multiple Windows 7 Ultimate copies, and that's known as counterfeiting. In the software piracy, duplicates are created of the genuine software programs with the appearance of that software that's being downloaded of it being real. These duplicates can then be sold at a lower price point, thus making the owner of the original software lose out on money they were supposed to make. So that, as you can see, that's very detrimental for the software designer, someone who actually designs the hard disk software themselves. Furthermore, the next three are, as you can see, the very left is hard disk loading. In this piracy mostly occurs in shops that resell computers. The shop owner would proceed to buy software legally and install it on multiple computers, and most of the time customers are not aware of these changes to the software, and because it looks so real, so authentic, they end up getting the pirated version of software, and thus they're paying less than the original price, or they're paying around the same price, which is not, it's detrimental for the customers because they don't know exactly what kind of software is being downloaded. The piracy on the right side is known as online piracy. This piracy is the most common form of piracy because it's basically illegal software is obtained through peer-to-peer file sharing systems such as blogs or websites that can offer free products, and also known as internet piracy. And the last piracy is in the middle. This is known as client-server overuse. In this form of piracy, more copies of the software are installed than it has license for. So as you can see, there's three different client computers, and in the server, often what happens in here is the clients will end up getting more licensed copies than the server intended to give them to, basically. That's the third one there. So now we're going to get to the ethics of it. So why software piracy is perceived to be ethical. So this will be shared from the perspective of the software pirate. So they believe in the concept of the freedom of expression and distribution of information. The idea that freedom needs to be distributed and not contained. According to the pirater, they have an innate right to pirate the software since they believe that they have a right to information stored in the software. Furthermore, by using the First Amendment, they justify that the distribution of illegal software is a form of expression of their human right to freedom of self-expression, and because of that, their actions are basically valid since their actions are falling under the First Amendment, which is freedom of expression, freedom of rights, Furthermore, in terms of one of their main counterarguments that they often encounter is that you're not helping the software designer because you're getting the product for free and not giving them the price or whatever currency they needed for that product. The software pirates believe that since prices for software are rising overall, they are not hurting software designers by legally pirating their software. Furthermore, in some instances, software pirates believe that if the software they downloaded was glitchy, buggy, or faulty, it's not a crime to spread and distribute that faulty software. Lastly, some software pirates who pirate software claim that they're only testing the software, and if they like using it, then they'll pay for the full product. Oftentimes, a lot of people say this, but then they don't end up downloading the full product. They just wanted to test it out and then never actually contribute or follow up on that promise. Now we will be moving on to why software piracy is perceived to be unethical from the perspective of the software designer. So the software designer loses out on money and profit from every person that pirates that software. So basically, one person doesn't download the software illegally, they're losing out on that money, and that multiplies because multiple people are downloading that same software through the 5 forms I just mentioned in the prior slides. If one person pirates a software, the loss is not that much. But since piracy can spread and more people can gain access to that software legally, the monetary loss becomes drastic and maybe even exponential if it keeps, because piracy is such a huge issue. Furthermore, software designers have a right to sell their software and make profit from it. So all the software pirates who claim that they can't do that, well, they can, because just like an author has the right to has the right to write a book and sell it. Similarly, an artist also has the right to sell their paintings in exhibits, just like that. But by that law, software designers have a right to sell their software because their art, what they're selling. And the act of piracy rids the software designer of their hard-earned profits that they're entitled to make, due to the piracy being a multi-person issue. Furthermore, software pirates claim that it is their First Amendment right to have access to obtain information and distribute it as a form of self-expression. That's incorrect because the First Amendment does not protect one from illegal activities, and overall that is an illegal act. Software pirates also claim that software prices are rising and that by pirating software they're not hurting the software designers financially, are also incorrect because in piracy not that many copies of software are sold legally. Thus, the designers are forced to raise the prices of software in order to compensate for their lost profit from people pirating software. As a side effect, consumers who actually pay for the software legally must pay a much higher price than they're supposed to. And that's mostly just a side effect because of the rising prices that designers have to implement so they can compensate for the profits that they're supposed to make, but because of pirates they didn't. So we're going to evaluate these standards to the SIIA standards mentioned before. So from the ethical standpoint of software pirates, according to the ethical standard enforced by the SIIA, if the software pirate downloaded software and distributed it without consent of the software designer, then the act itself is illegal. This makes the action overall unethical. If the software pirate downloaded it for archival or for storage purposes, then the act is not illegal, and instead the action becomes ethical. So through this, you can see that depending on the intent of the software pirater and the action and the reason to download the software for it can be, even though the action itself may seem ethical, in comparing it to those standards from the trade association, it can be perceived as either ethical or unethical depending on the intent behind it and the action itself, whether it was downloaded for storage purposes or whether it was downloaded for distribution purposes. If it's for distribution, it becomes unethical, but if it's downloaded for storage or archival purposes, then it becomes ethical according to the SIIA rules. Lastly, here are my sources I used for my PowerPoint. Thank you everyone for your time and have a great day.